Thank you, Dorita. Um, ladies and gentlemen, let me once again greet you. My name is Baitsi Podisi. I work for the CADESA Secretariat, the Center for Coordination of Agricultural Research and Development for Southern Africa. We are based here in Gaborone, Botswana, but our mandate is regional. I'm happy this morning to be the moderator for this webinar, which is primarily organized by SACAU that we partnered with to have this dialogue on the issue of agroecology, particularly focusing on the issue of research. I just want to check by way of giving you an overview of our planned program. I want to believe that most of you might have already seen it in your emails. And we are going to start off by having some brief remarks from the CADESA Secretariat, and I'll do this on behalf of the CADESA Executive Director, Professor Clive Dlamini, and this will be followed by some remarks from the CEO for the Southern Africa Confederation of Agricultural Unions, Mr. Ishmael Sunga, who, as I mentioned, they are the chief hosts of this webinar that we are co-hosting with them. And then we'll proceed to the panel discussions. Really here, we want this meeting to focus more on getting feedback from our listeners and the participants. SACAU being the voice of the farmers, a lot of the delegates or the people who are participating in these webinars are farmers. Therefore, we want to reduce the use of too much jargon and really try to be down to earth to really tease this issue of research and agroecology. We want to give a few people just to make some statements in the panel just to stimulate the discussions. And following that, we'll open it up for interventions from the audience. This is, as I said, essentially to get feedback, to get your views on what you think needs to happen as far as research on agroecology is concerned. And then we'll end this with a way forward that is just picking out what are some of the key takeaway messages that came out of the deliberations. So with much ado, if you allow me, this is how the agenda is going to roll out. And I want to, at this juncture, call everybody to the attention as we try to proceed with the program, where I will go ahead and give some opening remarks on behalf of the Executive Director for CADESA, Professor Clive Dlamini. As you know, CADESA is a regional entity that has been created by SADC member states to set the regional agenda on agricultural research and development. CADESA has been engaging our stakeholders on issues related to sustainable production. And I recall that in 2015, with the support of the Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, FIBL, in Switzerland, CADESA engaged the SADC directors of research and the deans of the faculties of agriculture for the universities of agriculture in the region on the need to devote more funding to support research, particularly on organic agriculture. This was in view of an ongoing activity then to come up with a continental policy or framework on organic agriculture. And as you all are aware, the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, the panel of experts report highlighted the challenge, the impact of climate change across several regions across the globe, and in particular our region, SADC was one of those that were highlighted that it will be affected by climate change. And this was calling for actions to deal with the impact of climate change and to try to build resilience within the system. And CADESA has been working with other actors to promote climate smart agriculture. Some of you would have been aware of some of our programs. As currently, most of our strategies have prioritized responding to climate change and on building resilience. You know our programs, some of which have ended and some are still ongoing. For example, we had a program supported by the German government on adaptation to climate change in rural areas in SADC. Currently, we have a World Bank funded program on food systems resilience program, and another one also supported by the World Bank on accelerated investment in CGR research on in climate research. And also we have the EU funded program CADAP XP4, which also was focusing on climate relevant interventions. And through this program, particularly the CADAP XP4, we have been having a lot of engagements on issues related to responding to the issues of climate change, including on agroecology. And CADESA has been engaging at a number of fora to try to tease out these topics, in particular agroecology, to get the views of our stakeholders. CADESA has promoted the adoption of conservation agriculture and routinely partners with agencies such as FAO to convene the Conservation Agriculture Regional Working Group as a platform to support the adoption of conservation agriculture, in particular in the region, as we have tried to, as a strategy to respond or to adapt to climate change. You know that there were the disruptions that were caused to value chains during the outbreak of COVID-19 and later on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, which affected the value chains, particularly to do with the availability of inputs, in particular fertilizers. This triggered certain actions, and also, more importantly, the Food Summit, which highlighted the need for us to transform the way we produce our food by trying to see how we can cut the long supply chains where possible, and also try to mitigate the risk and build resilience within systems of how we produce the food, so that we produce the food in a healthy way, because the way sometimes we produce our food was making people sick. And agroecology particularly has been hailed as one approach which facilitates adaptation to climate change and also the building of resilience, because within its principles, it embraces the elements of mitigation, that is the carbon sequestration, and also responding to the climate change, that is adaptation. So as a result, CADESA has co-hosted a number of regional and continental dialogues on agroecology and nature-based solutions to raise awareness and to get the views of our stakeholders on this approach. We have noted that agroecology in particular has not been explicitly acknowledged in the Kampala CADAP commitments, which were adopted early this year. And more recently, in line with this, CADESA has accessed support from the European Union to support a regional multi-actor research network on agroecology, where CADESA is coordinating an 8-member University of Cape Town-led consortium for a project called the Regional Agroecology Research Network, Southern Africa, RAINS. That's the acronym for this project that CADESA is coordinating, but the consortium is led by the University of Cape Town. Under this initiative, UCT is working with the Marondera University of Agriculture, Science and Technology in Zimbabwe, and the Sokoine University of Agriculture in Tanzania, and the Lilongwe University of Agriculture and Natural Resources in Malawi, and the Zambia Agricultural Research Institute, as well as the Institute for Organic Agriculture in Switzerland, FIBO, and the YPAD, which is the youth network for professionals in agricultural research and development, and the C4 ICRAF, which is a CG center focusing on forestry and agroforestry research. So the RAINS project itself tends to grow a robust, innovative, and sustainable transdisciplinary agroecology research and knowledge network in Southern Africa. Specifically, the RAINS project tends to focus on 4 areas, namely establishing a research network, developing a learning network that is to be building capacity of new researchers and professionals on agroecology, and also we'll be having a component of knowledge management and communications to engage the public and policymakers. And fourthly, it has a component of evidence-based policy analysis and advice. This is where to try to influence a transition within the region by coming up with evidence that can support decision making, including engaging with policymakers to change policies on the ground. So as I end the remarks on CADESA, from CADESA, let me mention that there's another related issue which would have influence on the issue with agroecology, which CADESA took part in. That is the articulation of the Soil Health and Fertilizer Action Plan, which is a continental blueprint for rescuing the situation related to soil degradation in the continent by promoting the sustainable utilization of fertilizers to improve fertility. As you know that most of Africa, we are really using very little fertilizers in our system. As a result, we are not realizing the production potential that is there. Therefore, there is what we call the Africa Soil Health and Fertilizer Action Plan. I want to stress the health part because it's very important, as it also relates to the issue of agroecology and nature-based solutions. So as a result, CADESA has been nominated by the SADC Secretariat to host the SADC Regional Soil Health and Fertilizer Hub. So because of this responsibility, CADESA in the past few months has been engaging with several partners, FAO and other actors, to come up to refresh the regional fertilizer program, which was developed earlier by FAO. It has been revamped to bring on board issues to do with the soil health aspects. And also, there's a proposal which CADESA will table to the ministers responsible for agriculture and food security next week, which is also will be talking to the hosting of the Soil Health and Fertilizer Hub. So with those few remarks, I just wanted to highlight that CADESA has been working with various actors relating to issues to do with improving productivity, addressing issues of soil degradation, responding to climate change. And as I mentioned, agroecology has been particularly identified by various actors, including our development partners, as an approach that needs to be embraced to promote better production while taking care of the environment. However, as I've mentioned, we've seen that there's still a lot that we need to iron out in terms of engaging our stakeholders, the farmers, our political leadership, as we've seen that the agroecology as an approach has not been emphatically emphasized in our blueprint for agriculture, which is the CADAP, the Kampala Declaration, which is a recent document which was adopted early this year in January. With those few remarks, I just want to appreciate the partnership that has been further enriched between us and SACAO, which is a regional farmer organization and the voice of the farmers, that they've reached out to us for us to partner to host this webinar to try to tease out the issue of support for research in agroecology. And with those few remarks, I want to hand over to the CEO for SACAO, Mr. Ishmael Sunga, to make his remarks as we start. Over to you, Sunga.
Thank you, Doctor, for those remarks. I see my video is not coming. Oh, there we go. Greetings, everyone, from SACAO, the Southern African Confederation of Agricultural Unions. I believe that most of the audience at the moment are familiar with who we are, but just for the record, I have to do this advert. We're a regional farmers organization comprising of 20 national farmers associations in 13 countries in Southern Africa. We are not represented only in 2 countries, namely the DRC and Angola, for reasons that we don't have the structures that can dock onto our system. But we're hoping that in the near future, they will have those structures, then we'll complete the entire membership. We also have membership, which is called associate membership, which is more recent. That will be the home for agribusiness in Southern Africa. So once the primary producers that we primarily represent as main members and have agribusiness associations to be part of our group, but more as associate members. We believe that if we work together, we can drive agriculture better into the future. we are diversified in many respects. We have smallholders in our membership, the majority of whom are, and also we have medium scale and large scale agriculture. We believe all types of farming systems can coexist in a complementary fashion and actually develop agriculture in Southern Africa. So yes, we do large scale commercial agriculture in as much as we do other forms of agriculture. We are also diversified in terms of cultures, of course, French-speaking members from Madagascar, Seychelles, Mauritius. We also have Portuguese-speaking members from Mozambique, and of course, English-speaking members from the rest of the country. Some of the membership organizations are very well established, like agroecology, and they're very old, 100 years each, 4 of them. And we also have some of the youngest farmers organizations in the region, for instance, from Eswatini, Lesotho, that are barely 15 years old, and we have everything in between. So it's really a rich mixture, a diverse mixture, but we think we are able to harness that diversity into something better and growing. Our main business is to be the voice of organized agriculture, farmers in particular, on matters of common interest. It's not on any matters, it has to be on matters of common interest, matters that cut across the different countries, such as climate change, such as trade, finance, you name it. So we're engaging in policy discussions at different levels. We are recognized by SADC, by COMESA, by CADESA, by NEPAD, by Africa Union as a key policy dialogue partner on matters to do with agricultural development in the southern parts of Africa. We work in many fields, and one of the areas that we've been working on for a long time has been climate change management, hence the topic of today, which is agroecology, which is a topic that we really want to invest a little bit more in and try also to influence as much as we can from a farmer's perspective, how it can be driven into the future, how we can shape agroecology to be the one that we want and not the one that is being marketed to us if we don't think it is appropriate. So we are looking forward to exciting conversations as we start charting this journey of working on agroecology. I call it the new kid on the block because that is a favorite of many development partners. And it is exciting when they talk about it, but we also want to know whether it is exciting as it is to them, as it is to us as primary producers and value chain actors. It's a topic that I think as we discuss today and as we go into other discussions related to this, Dr. Kodisi may have mentioned that this is one of the series of discussions that we are going to be hosting. So there's going to be much more, but this is only the beginning of it. And it won't be only on agroecology, by the way. We also want to expand it to cover other areas of agricultural research. So the topic for today is about research. And why research? Research is fundamentally important in driving industry into the future. It has driven agriculture, mainstream agriculture, to where it is now. It has been a key pillar. There's a lot of research organizations in the CGIAR that are driving research in order for it to deliver more and better and at scale. There's also a lot of research that is coming from the private sector. But the point being that we believe as farmers that research is an important driver of change if it is done properly and if it is well targeted. So hence we need to touch on it rather, when we talk about new things that are coming into the fold, such as agroecology. We believe that if research is deployed properly to agroecology, it could actually get us to the point where conventional agriculture is in terms of productivity, in terms of scale, and in terms of, more importantly, putting more money into the pockets of farmers. So we really want to ensure that as there is a lot of hype around agroecology development, we also need to look at what kind of research from a farmer's perspective might be able to give us the kind of outputs that we want, and not the outputs that are only related to environment or to climate, but also outputs, importantly, that are related to people. After all, it's about people. Farming is about people. And if it does not deliver to people, then maybe it is not playing its important role that it should. So part of the conversation really is beginning to talk about what kind of research we think is going to be appropriate from a farmer's perspective to take agroecology into the future. We support agroecology, indeed, but it has to be that agroecology that is worthy of support. And part of the worthiness of support is going to come from how it also talks to the pain points of farmers in general, and maybe smallholders in particular. Hence, this meeting. So one thing we are looking at, by way of just contextualizing what we'll be discussing today, is really to look at if research is as important as we think it is, to what extent is agroecology research being given the prominence that is commensurate with the hype around the promotion of agroecology development, particularly from the development sector? Do they match or not? And it's part of why we brought in CADESA, because they're about research in the region. They might have some views around that. We didn't do research around it. The next point really is, if the current portfolio of research that is going to agroecology, is it really answering to the pain points of farmers or not? Because quite often, in general, some of us believe that the research agendas are not speaking directly to a lot of the pain points that farmers face. So it's important for us to be able to begin to shape the research agenda of agroecology so that it addresses those aspects that we think are important to drive it into the future, particularly with respect to providing us with more incomes in our pockets. So that's another area I want to look at. And then also to look at what can we do as a key stakeholder to influence public research, to influence governments, to research, to fund, provide rather resources towards the research that we think is more important, not towards the research that the researchers think is important. The two quite often don't meet. So part of what you're trying to do is to make sure that there is a meeting point between the interests of those that want to do research and the beneficiaries, so to speak, of research. And the best way to do it is really through co-creation and setting the agenda of where research efforts should be going towards. We could go on and on about the thoughts that we have, but I think I should stop here so that we allow more discussion, and then also be part of the panelists later on, and also answering questions as we go along and try to shape the future we want with respect to agroecology. With those few words, Doctor, let me hand it back to you to do the moderation. Thanks, and looking forward to the discussions once more.
Thank you, Mr. Sunga. I think you've highlighted why we needed to have this dialogue, particularly focusing on research. And as you've highlighted, we need to ensure that the research agenda is talking to the pain points of the farmers, that to make sure that it's is equally exciting to the farmers as it is, as you've mentioned, to the development partners. And also as a way of finding out how you as farmers, as big constituents, can influence policy and governments for them to channel the resources towards the type of research that you as farmers want. Having said that, we are going into the panel session where I'm going to invite other people just to make their statements as well, so that they can share their thoughts regarding this. As I mentioned, we want to really make this more of a talking and listening session and not too long presentations. For us to start, I'm going to start with Dr. Martin Muchero, who is an agricultural policy expert in the region. Dr. Muchero has had a long history of working at the SADC Secretariat. He has been behind the crafting of some of our regional policies, and he has done also some research, including consolidating some work on the funding of agroecology in the region. CADESA in the past, we've partnered with ActionAid, who were doing a study to find out how much funding was actually being channeled into agroecology, and we partnered together to go and make a presentation to the SADC Parliamentary Portfolio Committee dealing with agriculture and trade, where the issue of agroecology was well embraced by our policymakers. But now we want to hear from Dr. Muchero as we give him this chance. I mean, he can communicate any additional information also about himself, which makes him relevant for this forum. Dr. Muchero, over to you. You can make your first reaction, and in your reaction, I would want you to also touch on the fact that you should talk to the fact that the current levels of resources that are allocated to research to support the development of agroecology in the region, do you think it is commensurate with the higher profile that has been accorded to agroecology, as you've heard from Mr. Sunga? And in your intervention, I would like you to give some regional examples or case studies of countries or in the region where agroecology is embraced, and what picture is emerging, because I know you've done some work in this area. And I'll make up a follow-up question later where you end in terms of what areas you think need further intervention as far as policy is concerned. But maybe as your first reaction, please join the meeting and say a bit about yourself. If there's anything that you think I left out, which makes you relevant for this forum, and then also try to respond to this, whether the current levels of resources that are allocated to research and development for agroecology are commensurate with the profile that is being accorded this agroecology topic. Thank you. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Bodise. To colleagues that are on the call, I would like to just say a few words about myself. In the sense of background, my first degree was in agriculture, second degree was in agricultural economics, and my PhD at the University of Pretoria was on rural development. And very much in that whole process, agroecology and the whole aspect of agriculture has been part and parcel of my entire life, if I could put it that way. In terms of experience, and as Dr. Bodise has already outlined, I spent quite a bit of time at the SADC Secretariat, responsible for developing the regional agricultural policy and its associated instruments, including the Regional Agriculture Investment Plan and also the development of the Agriculture Development Fund, which unfortunately has not yet started or kick-started. It's in the process of being operationalized by the SADC Secretariat, and it's one of the key elements that was considered to be an enabler for agriculture in the SADC region. The basis being that when you look at other regions, such as the EAC, particularly West Africa, they actually have an agricultural bank, and I think it's only SADC that does not have an agriculture bank. And this was foreseen a long time back by our heads of state in the Dar es Salaam Declaration way back then. And to that effect, the Agriculture Development Fund was then created, but it's still in its early stages of development. One of the key elements that was expected of the Agriculture Development Bank was also key support for research and development. At the time it was developed, agroecology had not become a major topic, but certainly as the ADF progresses, hopefully that will incorporate agriculture or agroecology a bit more in its activities. So that's part of what I've been involved in. But I think also what is critical maybe for this meeting is my involvement and experience in, and rather I was a co-author and co-designer of the Agroecology Financing Analysis Toolkit. We call it AFAT. The AFAT was commissioned by ActionAid, and so Dr. Stephen Greenberg and myself, we went about to develop this tool. This tool allows for analyzing policy, analyzing budgets, analyzing agricultural frameworks from a financial perspective vis-a-vis the various elements to which the finances are allocated. So it's a tool that is available on the general website, and it's a tool that we have been able to use in a number of examples in the region to identify the levels of financing that is going towards specifically going towards agroecology. Which brings me to the question that you have raised, Dr. Podise, about the current levels of resources allocated to research in support of agroecology. Let me start by saying that while some countries and more countries are now, at least in the SADC region, are moving towards an explicit exposition in their policies of agroecology, and a good example is Zimbabwe, which has adopted agroecology as the approach for its policy, agriculture policy. And similarly, I think Tanzania is also doing the same thing. There's still some way towards most of the SADC region or SADC countries adopting agroecology, at least from a policy perspective, but they generally are moving towards that direction. However, what we found is that despite that focus or the reattention towards agroecology, the amount of resources that is allocated in general to agroecology, before we go specifically into the research on agroecology, is still very, very minimal. When I say very minimal, we're still talking of less than 2% of the national budgets. That's in terms of the overall amount of funding that is associated with what we consider agroecology from that perspective. Overall, and then also we need to take into account the overall aspect that overall investment in research in total in the region, and Kadesa here would have more accurate data than I have. The overall resources that have been allocated to agriculture in the SADC region, for instance, are still less than 1% of what is recommended by the AU, 1% of the agricultural GDP. I think back towards the end or the beginnings of 2020, we were still at less than or at about 0.5% of our agricultural GDP as the allocated funding or resource that is allocated specifically to research. Now, when you combine that small figure of research, of funding to research, when you combine that with the only less than or 2% of total investment in agriculture that is associated with agroecology. What you find is that there's extremely very little that is going into agroecology at this point. We may want to come back to that point and many others, but let me also tackle maybe what Ishmael, you pointed out is, if I understood you correctly, either pain points, in other words, pain to the farmers, or pay points, in other words, what is giving farmers the pay. And I thought, and this is in response to Dr. Podise, your question about which research issues need attention to address information or policy gaps in relation to agroecology. In my work, what I've come up with are probably 3 or 4 specific areas. The first area that I wanted to touch on is time efficiency. Time efficiency, this is from the farmer's perspective and in general agriculture perspective. Agroecology appears to be divorced of time efficiency in the sense that the processes that are and the practices of agroecology are more long-term in terms of their benefit as opposed to short-term. Now, maybe just to give a quick example in this respect, and I will use fertilizer as an example. Using fertilizer, which is the industrial agriculture perspective of this whole process, the farmer has, if they have the funding obviously available, they have access to fertilizer that they can immediately apply, and some results will occur within 1 year. Whereas agroecology, which is a science, which is also a practice, and it's a social movement, does not take only a year in order for benefits to accrue. It takes much longer than a year. For instance, I mean, if you want to create manure, or you want to create, let me say, create manure from in its various forms and through various activities, the amount of time that it takes to generate sufficient such product for to benefit a field of production, a crop production, livestock production, takes much longer. So I'm saying there's the issue of time efficiency in agroecology that we as researchers need maybe to spend a bit more time on. How can we deal with the time efficiency aspect? And I noticed that we have Mr. Michael Holman, who will talk to issues of organic fertilizers and so on. So I'm looking forward to that discussion. But I'm relating that to how much time it takes in order for a benefit to arise, let's say, from the manufacture or the production of organic fertilizer to the benefit in terms of the crop that's been produced. That's one area. The second area that I also wanted to touch base on is labor intensity. And here I would like to use the example of Pumvudza, the Pumvudza program that was introduced in Zimbabwe, which targeted more than 1.8, nearly 2 million participants or farmers. And it came with certain practices, and the part of those practices involved the digging of holes, obviously, in terms of where the fertilizer or the organic fertilizer was to be placed, and in association also with the seed that had to be planted. Now, from what I gather and from the experience that talking to researchers on the ground, this is an extensively labor-intensive process. So, and as opposed to what traditionally people have become used to, which is industrial agriculture, you plow, you put your seed in, and then you come back, and in 1 day you can apply your fertilizer, and that's it, you're done. Now, the intensity that is called for in terms of the use of or the application of agroecology practices in the case of the Pfumvudza, for instance, was seen to be excessive. So how can we deal with that issue of labor intensity in agroecological practices? The third point that I wanted to raise is about social dimension of agroecology, which very often is not taken into account. And therefore, in the first elements that I've talked to about time, efficiency, labor, intensity, and so on, the issue of the social dimension becomes a bit blurry. But the social dimension of agroecology is very, very central and essential. And I think Ishmael, you partly touched on this in some of the key areas that we really need to focus on, and therefore put a bit more research into it, even if that research is only to elucidate or to elaborate or to support and advocate to farmers what agroecology is all about. I think it's important. The issue of co-creation of knowledge, I think, Ishmael, you touched on it. This is a very, very important aspect and an important social aspect or dimension of agroecology that we really need to spend a bit of time on. The social values and the diets is also another aspect that we need to think through with regards to the social dimensions of agroecology, and therefore the benefits, although maybe not short term, there may be certainly a lot more in the long term, a lot more. So,
thank you, Dr. Mchero. I think I want you to pause there because you've said
wonderful.
Quite a mouthful. I want to still go back to Ishmael, Mr. Sunga in particular, because I deliberately wanted to hear your thoughts, and then I want to go back to Mr. Sunga without him repeating what he already said. I want him to just try to also reflect with us as a farmer representative, that is, as a representative of the voice of the farmers. How has he practically been involved in shaping the research agenda on agroecology? I mean, we want to hear from him, and also I want him to weigh in whether he feels the current research, that is its efforts and focus on agroecology, does he really think it's really transformative, or we are just doing what we've done in the past? As some people have said, we don't see anything new that we are bringing. So, Mr. Sunga, I want you to highlight to us as a voice representing so many farmers. How have you been involved in shaping the research agenda? Thank you.
I will say in general, and not talking specifically about agroecology, that I think the relationship between research and researchers rather and farmers is not very healthy. In general, researchers do research on farmers and do research to farmers. They don't do research with farmers. It's not a co-created process. Essentially, there's also, I think, power imbalances there. If one is holding the research money, they also have a major say in what kind of research needs to be done. And farmers, as usual, are so polite that if we say we want to do research with them or to them, they will submit. But at the end of the day, perhaps they won't even follow through after the research. So in general, my take is that it's not a very healthy situation as we pick it up from our members, as well as we pick it up from some of our sister organizations. So we really need to look at how to redefine research. Perhaps the farmer should be holding the research money and then commissioning researchers and pay them, putting it on his head, so to speak, so that there is a bit of balance. But in terms of whether the research that is being undertaken, particularly now back to agroecology, is the right in terms of quantity and quality and focus, I think there's still a major gap, notwithstanding, of course, the fact that this is a new thing, a new area. Perhaps we should not be expecting too much to have happened within the last few years that it has started. but you never know, it might actually go down or even get worse. But the point I want to make here is that if you look at research in general and even go to agroecology in particular, most of the issues, I would argue, and challenges and pain points that farmers face don't need technical fixes. They're much more in the arena of processes and policies and social dynamics, market dynamics. For instance, the issue of one of the principles in agroecology is around equity and fairness. But if you look at the research on agroecology, it is perhaps not so much focusing on power relations in value chains, whereby primary producers end up having the lowest return and the highest risk, and other actors getting the lowest risk and the highest return. So that would be an area for research, in my view. It's a soft area, maybe not too exciting for researchers, but nevertheless fundamental to farmers. The other point really is about whether issues around productivity, as alluded to by Martin, are really addressed. And also issues around, we need a new generation of farmers for many reasons to get into the sector. But is this something that really is going to be attractive? I think it can be made attractive, provided we define it the way we want, and then invest research in other factors, create an ecosystem that will drive it to the equivalent of what conventional agriculture is. But long and short answer is that it is not properly calibrated, if at all, with the needs of farmers. And it's time that farmers define what is that they want research to focus on, and also themselves being involved in it. Thanks. Over to you.
Mr. Sunga, you said something crucial. You said we need to make it attractive on issues of productivity. Can you cite for an example of some of the issues which you think maybe might be a turn-off in terms of agroecology, which might not make
it's a turn-off. I mean, I've been privileged to see some of the poster examples of agroecology, and it's sad. For me, it exudes science of destitution. That it is not science-driven, it is not data-driven. You find sometimes plants that are socially distancing each other, one the other side, another, and I still think there is greater need for simple optimization. It's not optimized, and as a result, it presents this view, this image that it is for the poor, and also. Part of the conversations we've heard from some of our members, they are doing agroecology because they are poor. If that is the reason that you are going to do agroecology because you are poor, maybe it's not going to take us into the future. So I mean, there are a lot of other things really we need to look at. And I think these are research questions, really. And it's a turn-off in terms of that is it does not have an agribusiness element into it, which drives people, which brings money into the pockets of farmers. Perhaps the research question is, how can we create agribusiness around agroecology for it to be able to fire as well as it should? Thanks. Over to you.
Thank you. I think this is, you've said quite some interesting facts about trying to make this attractive, and also that it exudes signs of destitution, that it lacks, sometimes it lacks elements of optimization, and often it's something that is meant for the poor. And I think while those statements are fresh, I just want to skip Mike and bring on the youth farmer, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, I want you to join in and actually introduce yourself, and also indicate what links you to this topic on agroecology. And in your response, I want to ask you, as a farmer, which agroecological practices do you implement in your farm? As a youth farmer, we just want to understand, even as you talk to this topic, to know what are you actually implementing. And as part of your response also, as a youth farmer, which interventions do you think can make agroecology practices, whether the innovations or opportunities, more attractive to the youth, riding on the statements which have just been made by the Sakao CEO? Over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I would like Sorry about that. Good morning.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. First and foremost, I'd like to thank Kadesa and Sakao for this opportunity. For my journey in agroecology, it actually started with Kadesa. So I am an agronomist by profession, so I do have a Bachelor's of Science in Agriculture. And I am currently in my final semester of my Master's of Science in Agribusiness, which I'll be completing in the next 2 weeks. And Kadesa has played actually a huge role in me adopting agroecology practices on my farm. And this started after I attended 2 workshops. So one was the foresight training, and then it was through Ukama Ostawi, which was in Zimbabwe last year. And basically with the kind of practices which I implement on my farm, it's basically rooted in indigenous knowledge and ecological sustainability, where I primarily focus on growing a range of indigenous vegetables as well as maize, and also just the importance of the usage of our local varieties in Zambia, which are well adapted to, the climate and the environment. So this also supports biodiversity as well as seed sovereignty, which I've seen is very important, because even in my area, when I grow these local vegetables, I do seed sharing. Even with the maize actually started with a neighbor who gave me a 2 kg maize seed, which has grown to over a ton worth of seed, which I have been sharing, and even with the local seeds. And then also just to emphasis to maintain soil health, we apply, compost, which is made from the farm. So we create a closed loop system, which uses residues, from whatever we have grown, and so that we are not really dependent on other external inputs. So we are feeding our soils with compost, working with manures, and then we're also implementing practices such as mulching. And, through the Ukama Ostawi training and Kadesa workshops, the importance of mulching, maintaining soil moisture, suppressing weeds so that we're not using a lot of, chemicals, weed killers, and just to also help soil microbial activity inside our soils. And then in terms of, tillage, we also do minimum tillage. So with maize, practices such as potholing and reaping as well, just to maintain our soil structure and also not have too much erosion. So with the statement which we're coming to about how agroecology can be made attractive for youth farmers, I believe, to make these practices more attractive, it would require a multidimensional approach that, incorporates things like innovation, access to finance, and of course, empowerment. So firstly, with, these programs, capacity building programs or trainings, they should be, very practical, very hands-on. And even after, mentorship and long-term skills development should be followed on, so that it's not just a one-off training or something that's just happened once and it ends there. And, secondly, youths, if we're granted access to land, to resources, also access to finance, just to, solidify the training. And, if inputs are also subsidized for youths, it would really go a long way. And, if we harness the use of, digital technology I feel like digital technology also makes, the farming a little more attractive, things on soil moisture, what's happening in the soils. These are some of the things which could make it a little more appealing. And then, in terms of markets, like Mr. Sunga was talking about, how people are saying agroecology is for people that are, for people that don't have the finances. I feel like if the markets are strengthened, where agroecology, ecological products, have higher economic benefits, through value addition, perhaps things like organic certification of, products, as well as if on the market, premium prices, as well as, even for export, if there's higher value pegged at the products. And also one thing I've seen is that, with the adoption of, local vegetables,
Elizabeth,
they're also
I'll ask
cheaper.
you, can you just pause for a moment? I see a request there that the interpretation has paused. Maybe I can ask Dorita if you can assist.
Yeah. Yes, so sorry. Thank you,
with-
Doc. They were actually dropped out of the meeting. They've just come back in. So I do apologize. Thank you, Luigi, for also informing us. So they are back in the meeting, but also if we can ask the speakers just to speak a little bit slower, because they do need to interpret as well whilst you are talking. All right. Let me
Okay.
just see. Navida, are we good to go? Agnivaldo, are we good to go? All right, there we go. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your assistance. And also, Dorita, be mindful, also be checking all those messages. If there are those which may come as a form of questions, then we'll be able to go back to them. But let me allow Elizabeth, she was really flowing, that she can continue. Sorry for that disruption, Elizabeth. So as you move towards us, okay.
Okay, not a
Wrapping up
problem.
your bit. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so also I think even encouraging, collaboration with the youths, peer networks, youth-led organizations that, assist with advocacy for favorable policies. And even, if youths are out there speaking about the benefits, issues of seed sovereignty, food sovereignty, that's very important. And I feel like even aligning the narrative that, it's not just a farming method or a farming practice, but it is a way of life, that values the environment, stewardship in the environment, and importantly, food sovereignty, and just making it even more relevant to the next generation. So it's not just about us in the now, but also thoughts of the next generation. So I feel like these are some of the things that could make it a little more appealing. So really a multidimensional approach, which is, innovation, access to finances, and empowerment as well.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Beth. I just wanted to make a follow-up question. Earlier, you had Mr. Sungai mentioning that the issue of optimization is often lacking in what has been portrayed as agroecology. Based on your experience and the scale at which you operate, do you think you can make a living out of that, and how optimized it is? You were talking of digitalization, and I would want to assume also this bring into elements of mechanization. Are there any possible technologies which you think could fit a situation where you are having, say, mixed cropping, for example? Because I know mechanization sometimes calls for uniform crop stands and the like for you to be able to deploy your machines in terms of harvesting. In a setting for agroecology, what do you think could work? I am challenging you because you said you're an agronomist. So have you thought about that?
I haven't actually really thought about that in full perspective, but I feel like there is room to, put in technology, especially if it's, in terms of, for example, maize production, even in terms of planting, it can be mechanized. I've seen in Zambia right now, there is a higher preference of this local indigenous maize. And if it's grown on larger hectareage, even with a planter, it is workable. And even in terms of, for example, technologies which like drip irrigation that does work on larger scales or medium scale kind of farming. So I think there is room for it to actually be done or practiced in a bigger way. And if, if farmers are also focused on things like building soil health, if you're really like using a lot of your crop residues to create a lot of compost heaps and just trying to build your soils, it is something that I see that can be done even on a larger scale.
Thank you. Thank you for your intervention. I am just encouraging you to keep your questions. We'll take a round of questions after this. I want to invite Mr. Michael Halam, who is the managing director for Fertilizer Manufacturers Botswana. And I think for Mike, I want him to share with us, because as a private sector actor, in their investment, I would assume they did some form of research. I want to find out what can you share with us on what type of research related to agroecology your company undertook to come up with the type of products that we are having currently in the market. And as well as you are making your deliberation, you can highlight the areas of intervention which you think need research to be able to unlock the potential of the private sector to invest more towards this transition towards agroecology in the region. Over to you, Mike, and start off also by saying any other bit about yourself if you think it will also help the audience in terms of what you do. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Betsy, and good morning to you all. My apologies, I can't get my camera to operate, probably due to lack of technology on my part, but it's probably just as well you don't see me anyway. But I'm very delighted to be asked to participate here on this forum. A bit of background about myself: my maximum tertiary education was a master's in agricultural economics from Reading University, with a few agricultural management degrees below that from the University of Natal a long time ago. And I'm pleased to say that my academic quest was great at the time, but I think at the age of 68 now, I'm still learning every single day. And that's one of the things we need to keep in our minds, is that the world is our oyster, and every single day we are learning something new, and particularly in the agroecological area. So I'm really encouraged as to how more and more this subject is coming to the fore, and it's very comforting that at last we're receiving a voice on the world stage to ensure agroecology is being taken into consideration in the quest for increasing food production in Africa, in particular, and also the rest of the world. We've been active in Botswana since 2012, and we also have companies registered in surrounding SADC countries. We are primarily an organic fertilizer manufacturing company, and we've added facilities to allow blending of all sorts of fertilizer. And just, I would like to take this opportunity to inform everyone that on all the maps, Botswana doesn't really feature in terms of fertilizer production or organic fertilizer production, maybe because we are such a small agricultural country, but we are definitely joining the course of this development. And there are many manufacturers of organics in Botswana. Many of them are actually listening in here, where they're producing liquid fertilizers, vermicompost, biologicals, etc., etc. So as a Botswanan, I'm very proud to say that I believe that we're at the forefront of this whole thing. So Betsy, that I'm probably going to answer some of the questions from Dr. Mochera and Mr. Sunga, some comments as I'm prattling away. But basically, the reason that I started this business was because we saw massive resources of manures, etc., in Botswana due to the cattle industry and the poultry industry here. And there were mountains of manure that was available. And hence it was this idea, because of I'm passionate about the organics, and I'm a fourth generation farmer using organics. So this came through from my great grandfather, my grandfather, etc. So the passion has gone through, and therefore from a young age it's been an exposure to organics, and that's the reason why. A lot of the reason was not an economic reason that I did this, but mainly because of a passion, and I knew that organics actually work. So to answer some of the questions was, what were some of the restrictions that we've had in getting people to understand organics and that? And one of it is Mr. Sunga alluded to it, in that research is directed to those who've got the funding and who have the money to do this. And similarly, it's that in the fertilizer industry, is that there's a lot of money behind the fertilizer industry. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, particularly the chemical industry. And many of the policies in Africa are subsidized, or fertilizer policies are subsidized. And so there's a great degree of influence as to what fertilizers are used. So our biggest restriction, and I hope I'm going to answer Dr. Machero's comment here, was that we found it difficult for the farmers to use organic products in the form of composts and powders and things like that. So we started pelletizing our product, and again, that was a bit of a breakthrough, but it still didn't solve the problem of large-scale commercial adoption of our products. So in 2017, we did a lot of research, and we've incorporated a granulation plant, and we can now granulate organics into the same size as inorganic fertilizers, i.e. 2 to 4 millimeters. And again, we found it's very difficult for farmers to adopt, and also it's not a recommendation that we make, that you make this complete transition from chemical or current production systems into organics. It does have to be a gradual phasing in, and I think Elizabeth also mentioned that it's a decision that they're doing on the farm. So our biggest breakthrough was actually getting it into the granular form. And so what we have done, our objective has been to reduce the NPK influence of chemical fertilizers for the farmers, and also in the production process. So we've done a huge amount of number of trials ourselves, and it's proven that actually with a combination of organics, chemicals, and biologicals, you can increase your production and your yields, etc. At the same time, you are now starting to do that transition towards a fully agroecological method of production. We also looked at reducing the input costs for the farmers, i.e. you don't need to have such NPK concentrations of fertilizers in the soils, because of the relationship there is between soil, organics, and biologicals. So you're actually now starting to develop the soil to start being more friendly and not being sterilized by the complete use of chemical fertilizers. So, and Dr. Machero, we have found immediate results on lands that has increased yields with this lower NPK and more organic fertilizers that we're putting in, with biological interventions as well. So our research has largely been based on a trial and error, and the challenge has been to persuade policymakers, governments, and farmers to change. And I think the more and more we have these conferences, and we are finding Botswana is due to put out the agricultural policy document, I think, next week. And it's interesting to see that they are really chasing now the policy of sustainable farming systems, organics, etc., etc. So we're very, grateful that Botswana is certainly leading the way in that sense. And also, there are many other countries, as we know, that are already in this, but we just need to get the momentum going. So,
Okay.
sorry, yep.
Yes, you were mentioning that there was a bit of reluctance in terms of the farmers and even the policy makers or government. In your case, it looks like it was research that you were doing on your own. So, what gap do you think is there? How do you think you need to be able to have a strong buy-in? Because it's like you are just blowing your own horn here. How can you get your product there to be validated by others such that they could buy into what you are doing?
So I think your word validate is really prime here. And what we need, based on with the research that I'm going to elucidate on, is that we need training for policymakers, extension officers, and everything like that to get out of the old ideas of NPK fertilizers. So training, I believe, of research extension officers, policy is one of the highlights, and I think all these forums that we're having is helping that. But one, I believe that would be really helpful on the research side is that, yes, we've been blowing our own horn and we have research results, but we don't have them stamped and verified by established institutions like a university or something like that, because that's expensive business. If you want someone to do trials for you, you've got to really pay it, and then they're going to publish a paper. It's really expensive, and so that's where I think a lot of help for us as agroecologists and pushing the organic agenda need a desperate amount of assistance in order to be able to conduct the trials and then verify them at the end. And then I think another
that will be your last point, Mike. Maybe as you wrap up, so that we can invite the discussions for and interjections from the audience. Okay, sorry, just go ahead as you wrap up.
So one more thing, I think we must not look at research in isolation. We've got to look at it as a supply chain. And we've got to look, I think Mr. Sunga touched on that, is that we've got to make sure that the farmer is growing the right product in order to sell it into the market, and he's growing it under the right conditions in order for it to be acceptable in the market. So it has to be a complete supply chain. We can't look at research in isolation. We have to look at it, what it's going to cost him to produce, what the product is, and what he's going to get for it at the end to ensure his profitability. I feel that many farmers are pushed into growing something, say, like maize in a non-maize growing area, when in fact they should not be growing maize in that area because it's not suited to those climatic conditions. So we need to really look at the chain of production and not just research in isolation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing out those insights and your experiences as a private sector actor. And I want to open up the floor now to interjections from the floor. If you can show by raising up hand. And actually, from the word go, I really would like to invite people from the research fraternity, people from the NARIs. We've had comments here about the need for research to be done following the needs of farmers. And I see Joe from the East and Southern Africa Small Scale Farmers Forum. Joe Msinga, I recognize you. Joe Mzinga. Okay, I'll give the chance to Chimoyo, to Vimbai. Chimonyo.
Dear Vimbai, we can't hear you. If you can select the English channel, please. Thank you.
Okay, well,
I think we can hear. We can hear.
Dorita, are you sorted? Are you sorted? Because the interpreters need to also hear her.
Let us speak. Wimbai, please continue. Let me see. Yeah, no, I can't hear her.
Interpreters can hear her. We can confirm
okay,
interpreters can
wonderful.
hear her.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your voice is faint, Dorit.
We are not hearing her.
Imai, can you come closer to the
I
mic?
can
You will
hear
be
her
faint.
from Lilongwe here.
Okay.
Now we can hear you.
I can't hear, but anyway, as long as.
Yep. So Vimbai, I want you to be brief so that we can have more comments from others. Yes, as you move towards wrapping up your comment, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I want to invite somebody from the NARIS, anybody from one of our research centers in the region, any national, the NARIS, we want to get feedback on this, on how much you are mainstreaming agroecology into your programs. I want to recognize Tererai, and then followed by Cephas. Please make your intervention very short because we want to get more people to contribute. Tererai?
Yes, just three things that I have. First of all, thank you for the interesting intervention in Botswana when it comes to fertilizer production. But then the question is, has there been, I think there would need to be more research in terms of the bulkiness of these fertilizers when you compare to the normal conventional fertilizer, and then trainings focused on making sure these solutions are actually practical to farmers. Now, one of the key things is at times I feel that we are setting up farmers for failure, because one of the key things is the transition to agroecology is not an easy thing. Recently, we had farmers being trained on the professional way or the conventional way of agriculture. Now we have a new technology. It falls on the farmers, and very little research is done prior in terms of the economics of the whole thing. So it's always back and forth, and farmers are receiving new technologies each and every 5 years span.
Yes, thank you, Tererai. Cephas, you are next. Please make yours short and sweet. Yes. Yes, you are audible. Yeah, go ahead. Thank you. That was short and sweet. I will ask Fred, followed by Dr. Prince.
Thank you. Yeah, I will not waste time with introductions because that takes time. So just my name, that is Frederick Msisia from Lilongwe here. I'm a researcher. I have two comments. One is to say, I think we recognize that issues of agricultural development, when you take them from value chain approach, then it is several stakeholders involved. So it is not just the agroeconomic researchers or researchers at the research station, it goes beyond. Now, when you bring in the value chain approach, for example, when you talk about agriculture financing, then you're already talking about issues of interest rates, and you're talking about their implications on the repayments, you're talking about the risk of agriculture financing, which may not fall under the realm of a researcher at a research station. So I think it needs a central coordination point, which is the policy holder at the government minister level, number one. Number two, what I wanted to share is last year I was involved in a behavioral change study. And it came out very clear that issues affecting agriculture technology adoption, whether we're talking about it from agroecological point of view or agroforestry or any other perspective, they have a very big behavioral change dimension. I'm referring to issues of attitudes, issues of beliefs, issues of norms, self-efficacy values. So for example, in the study found out that in which I was reading, that the youth farmers in the area that I was involved, they have a very low attitude towards, let's say, organic farming. They consider it as something for those that are resource constrained. If you have money, why not just buy fertilizer and apply and get the good optimal yield and going through this wrong route of manure, organic farming, and all these things in the name of soil and water conservation. So now we're at the stage of finding way of developing behavior change messages to say, how can we romanticize soil and water conservation interventions? That it's not just for the sake of high yields, as the attitude is among the youth farmers. So there are issues there of beliefs. Maybe as some colleague has already said that maybe because of subsidies in the agriculture sector, which are making fertilizer cheap and applicable even where we are supposed to focus on soil and water conservation and other related technologies for sustainability and not just returns for tomorrow. So there are issues that are across the behavioral change dimension, and it also cuts across the value chain. Thank you for this, and colleagues.
Thank you, Fred Msiska. I think there is another Fred. You will follow after Dr. Kuiper. I realized when I said Fred, the other Fred.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. Yes, mine would lean towards Mike's presentation on organic fertilizer, that they are pelletizing organic manure into fertilizer, I think, putting it into bags. If you look at Africa, productivity is very low in terms of when you compare with with the North and maybe the West as well. And the reason why that is because we are said to be utilizing very little inorganic fertilizer and being encouraged to use more so that we can increase our production. Like we are told 25 kgs per hectare is our average in Africa, 150, 135 kg per hectare in EU as an average. You can see that we are very low. And So our farmers are actually, I think, having two messages coming. One, to increase inorganic use, because we are very low in utilization, and that's why our yield is very low. But at the same time, also that we should practice the agroecology, which also encompasses the use of organic fertilizers. And when you look at the availability of these resources, organic versus organic fertilizer versus the inorganic, you see that farmers are more likely to use inorganic fertilizer. One, because it is most likely going to, from their experience, the responsiveness is faster than when you use the inorganic, and also the issues of bulkiness that have already been brought. So, to you, Mike, is it not because the organic fertilizer, or the push or for adoption of organic fertilizer is not so strong, and also the results that are coming from use of the pelletized inorganic is not comparable to what is already subsisting? Because farmers are rich now, they will always choose that which will bring them more. And most from where I'm standing, the farmers would most likely use inorganic fertilizer because of its responsiveness to yield. So that goes to Mike. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kuiper. I think maybe I should pause here to ask for a response from Mike, and so that we don't get a lot of questions. And also there was a question as to whether what can be done to mainstream agroecology across the region. Let me allow Mike to go first. I'll come in as backup on some of the issue in terms of the regional approach. Mike, maybe you can respond on the issues related to the use of organics versus inorganics.
Yes, thank you very much. And I think I'll probably answer a few questions in the process. Yeah, through our development phase, we identified that there was the resistance or inability to change from inorganic fertilizers to organics. And that's specifically why we went and invested in a granulation process that would actually granulate the organics to be the same size as inorganic granules. And this allowed us now to blend freely with inorganics and without having any settling in the bags and everything like that due to different size variations, which we pelletized product we couldn't blend because there was the different sizes in the bags, and they were settling in the bags, and it would come out uneven in the lands. Plus also being pelletized, it wouldn't go through the machinery. So the big breakthrough with us was when we actually managed to granulate the organics. And we have managed to commercialize that. Our production potential here in Botswana is 30,000 tons a year. We're putting up another factory in Zimbabwe of 60,000 tons a year. And we're also looking down in the Eastern Cape for putting in an 80,000 ton a year organic granulation plant using waste materials. And one of the issues has been that every single country in Africa is blessed with waste materials, and we're just not utilizing them or putting them in the right form for farmers to use. So to answer the question is that I believe, and we've done all the calculations, that if we can grow out the granulation of waste materials in each country, you immediately reduce the cost of that input, specifically because of transport and all the rest of it. And then the proof is in the pudding, and which we have, is that even with lower NPK fertilizers, we are getting higher in some cases, but equal yield results out of it. And then as the transition occurs, the farmer can gradually reduce his chemical input as his soils also start contributing to the yield process. So we think that the commercialization of organics is one of the biggest restrictions to the acceptance by farmers of the agroecological process that we're talking about. And yes, farmers, it's much easier to go and buy a bag of chemical fertilizer and just put it on and it happens immediately, etc., etc. But we are exporting to the region. So the farmers also now have access to a bag of fertilizer that's granulated and ready to use. And also, we must not forget the use of liquid organics. There's huge developments in liquid organics and the use of biologicals, etc., which is helping develop the soils and everything like that. So I really think we're on a roller coaster at the moment, and this is just gaining momentum. And like I say, we're even looking at putting in a factory in Ireland, in Europe, in order to cater for all their waste products from the cattle industry. And the other big waste product we are forgetting about is human waste. This is a psychological thing for many, but it's been used for centuries. Centuries it was used as a form of fertilizer. Unfortunately, with the diets that we have as humans these days, we have a lot of heavy metals and other stuff in the waste. But there is technology that's coming out now that's going to separate that. So every single country has millions of tons of human waste that we should be processing and using and reducing the dependence on imports into the country, because we don't all have phosphate and potassium deposits. There's only a few countries in the world that have it. And these are alternatives that we have, coupled with soil development and everything like that. And we can do this, and it's happening. We are doing it. It's just a matter of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. I think there was a question with regard to what can be done to mainstream agroecology across the region in terms of having something like a regional policy. I think we are hoping from the ongoing initiatives such as the RAINS project, which is going to be looking into policy issues, and also the other actors, as I've already mentioned. We have I mentioned the earlier work which Dr. Muchero alluded to done by ActionAid on the tool, the analysis tool on finance. And this has been used as an advocacy tool to try to lobby our policymakers into embracing agroecology. However, as I mentioned in our comments, despite the fact that our people don't necessarily oppose the adoption of agroecology, we haven't seen it being embraced fully in the CAADP document. I think there's still some lingering questions about whether we'll be able to feed our people in the short term if we are to go full scale into agroecological agriculture. However, I just want to highlight that the issue of Africa is that we are saying our soils are degraded, and with the current conventional processes that we are following, we are further harming our soil. So through the wrong use of inorganic fertilizers. And there's greater benefit in using the organics because we are adding organic matter into our soil. So we are encouraging the stakeholders to use more fertilizer in their soils, particularly the organics, so that we can raise our productivity. We need to educate our farmers on the proper use of fertilizers, because what we are currently using is not sufficient, and even the little that we use sometimes is used wrongly, causing more harm to the soil microbial activity, which we need to support the good soil health that we need. And the current program, which is on soil health that we are building up, we think will also add to this, building all the body of research which other actors such as your ICRAF and the other CG centers have been working on to try to promote good soil health, which actually is a better strategy going into the future. I want to hear some voices from the research centers, and we have, I will give a chance to Fred, and followed by Jeffias from Zimbabwe, and then from the Kingdom of Eswatini, Stamvumbu Bongani. So Fred, you have the chance to make your your intervention. Okay. Thank you. I think the question has been noted. Let's hear from Dara from Zimbabwe. Yes, I would want you to be a bit brief because of time, because we need to be wrapping up at 12, and we still want to give a round of closing and the key messages. But yeah, maybe you can highlight some of the key ones in terms of if you can move to us, winding up your intervention in the next minute or two. Thank you very much for your intervention. We'll hear from another researcher, Nari from Eswatini, Bongani, and then I think I will request Bongani, please be brief, and followed by Mr. Habuladze from Botswana, and then we'll close it with ACT because of time as we want to wrap up. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Bongani, for your sweet intervention. I'm giving a chance to Mr. Habuladze and then followed by Timothy from ACT. We can hear you. Thank you, Dan. Timothy from ACT, you have your chance. Please make it brief as well. Yes, we can hear you.
Good. First is I will recommend probably two things to be done to make sure that the organic products are getting into the market and they are becoming profitable. We have to, the researchers, I think you have a lot of researchers here. The researchers have to do some research which will enable the organic product that we will produce be of more benefit to the farmers. More than looking to the issue of food securities. If farmer understand that once he produces organically, he's gonna get more profit than producing organic wise, then more farmer will go into that. So we need to do a lot of researches. And the issue of the fertilizer also, we need to do a lot of researches so that the organic fertilizer become easily available in the plant once it is applied, so that the farmer they can see the changes, positive changes, as immediately as possible. As of today, if you put it organic fertilizer in the soil, you can stay maybe for 2 weeks, 3 weeks to get the results. So farmers are not. That's why the farmers are not really. They are somehow hesitant to use this kind of fertilizer compared to inorganic one. But also we need to look into the policies. We have to have the very good policies within our government system. We need to, especially from the farmer organization, we need to influence the government to change the policy, looking the organic fertilizer and organic input into, for example, in Tanzania, we are providing the subsidy. So we need also to subsidize the organic fertilizer. For example, in our country, we have influenced the national policy over the fertilizer. Nowadays, they are now subsidizing of course, it is semi-organic kind of fertilizer. We have an industry here, which is called Intracom, which is producing like a semi-organic kind of fertilizer. They are mixing up the organic and inorganic. But now that fertilizer is now put into the subsidies program in the country, so that we can be able to promote the usage of fertilizer, organic fertilizer in the country. So we can influence the policies of the country, that probably we can have kind of policy which will encourage or which will subsidize the organic fertilizer and leave other fertilizer unsubsidized, so that more people, more farmers can be attracted to go to use organic fertilizer and organic input. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Timothy. I think I'm looking at the time. According to the time that we are scheduled, we are 3 minutes to the time. I want to beg your indulgence for another 15 minutes to allow us to wrap up nicely and to allow us to respond to a few questions. I think most of the submissions in this last round of comments were more of suggestions, not questions as such. But there was a question from Fred from Zambia, who is a new farmer. He was highlighting that it looks like more interventions are more on managing the soil fertility, and there's very little which goes into managing the crop itself. I could just submit to you that, Fred, there are some organic products that are there that can be used to control certain diseases and pests, the use of even pheromones to attract away some of the pests. You heard Mr. Khaboladze mentioning some biologicals which they are using. There is another body of language. I think we've noted that skewedness, that there's too much talk more on the soil rather than managing the plant itself in terms of the pests and diseases. There are some organic products that can be used actually. If you look, things like the neem tree, for example, which can be used to control certain pests and diseases on most of our plants. And that is there's a whole body of knowledge in that. We will see how we can also increase more dissemination on that aspect. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we've had a very rich discussion, which started off by us hearing the need for us to make sure that the kind of research that we do actually responds directly to the farmers' needs, and it talks to the pay points. That is to say, it needs to be profitable. That agroecology should not be seen as something which is a sentence for those who are poor to remain poor. That we should look into making sure that this agenda actually is influenced by farmers because they are the ones who are doing production. And Dr. Mucheru highlighted that there's a toolkit which can be used actually to help with the analysis of how much funding is going to agroecology. And he highlighted a few countries in the region that have policies in place. But he made it clear to us that the level of funding that is going into this area of research is still very low. It's still very low, which is less than of the national budget. Please mute your phone. And he highlighted the issues of that there are still gaps, that is like this agroecology, the issues of time efficiency, the labor intensity, and issues of the social dimensions that are often neglected in the research. There is this concern about the co-creation, that farmers are innovators in themselves, but researchers tend to think they are doing research on farmers and about farmers, but without necessarily taking the needs of the farmers. And farmers, because they are polite, as Mr. Sunga put it, they often just listen to what the farmers do, but afterwards they do whatever they've been doing. They ignore what was brought to them by the researchers. So this means that there's need for us to address this issue of the power relations in the value chain as an area of research, and also on how to improve the productivity, make it very agroecology attractive. We've heard from a youth farmer who also touched on how she's bringing in biodiversity, issues of food and seed sovereignty, but that there's need for more interventions in terms of mentoring the youth, also holding them, giving them access to land and finance and subsidized inputs and the use of technology, and the need for us to have some form of certification so that agroecological or organic products can fetch a decent return compared to the conventional. And Mike Hallam highlighted what they've done in Botswana with the taking advantage of a resource which was idle, which are the manure from feedlots, from crawls, and also from poultry units, which now they've blended that with conventional inorganics, and they've perfected the granulization of such fertilizers, and they're expanding in the region. However, he highlighted the difficulty in terms of penetrating the markets, not being well understood by the farmers, some bit of resistance there, and also from the policies which were in place. However, he also alluded to the need for us to train, to do a mindset change amongst the farmers and the extension workers. They need to be retrained. And we are made aware of the resources that are available from our CGR partners, basically issues of how to influence behavior change and also generating evidence, and the use of mechanization to remove the drudgery from this. We need to address the issue of the bulkiness of these products so that they can be more user-friendly. We've heard of the need to also really interrogate this issue of behavioral change as from CISCA, that this wrong perception that agroecology is for the poor. We have highlighted the fact that we need to use more fertilizers in our system as Africa, because our fertilizer application rates are very low. That is the focus of the Soil Initiative for Africa, which is saying let's use more fertilizers, especially the organic ones, because they are adding organic matter into our soil. And to facilitate that shift, we've heard voices saying we need to train our farmers, we need to emphasize more, educate them more on the organic solutions. And there were pointers there for word of caution in terms of the toxicity or the heavy metals that are found in certain manure sources, such as those from piggeries and poultry. And the need for us to integrate this with meteorological data, because we need to cooperate with nature when we are into agroecology. We've had examples from Zimbabwe and also from Botswana on some of the products that are out there, and they need to do more research that can benefit farmers, that we should make agroecology more beneficial to the farmers, to make it more attractive so that the farmers realize better returns. The use of foliar application versus on the soil, because foliar application makes the plant to uptake the nutrients quickly and to give results. and for the farmers to influence policies more. I think those were the key highlights that came from the presentations. I want to invite there's a hand which has been up for a while, I think possibly from, is it Mauritius? Mr. Guncham.
Yes, good morning.
That will be the last one, after which then I will request.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Yes.
Yes. Sorry for my lost intervention because I was in a agrodiversity panel in China. So for me, I have been practicing agroecology from a very long time when it's developed. And for me, what I can say, agroecological is a policy decision, and it seems they have developed the principle. There is 12 principles, and I want to know how many principles we farmers we have to follow, because what I know, I have learned things because we are doing organic, and organic, how we can compare organic and agroecological farming, because what I have learned is in organic is there is a economic aspect, there is a environment aspect, but in agroecology there is a social aspect, which is very important. Then we will define, you will be that then we can say that you are doing agroecological. So because the social aspect is just like for example, sharing what you are doing. You are sharing the information to the customers. This is the social aspect. There is agrotourism. This is the social aspect. There's many things that which bring the social aspect. And of course, I think we have to define because every farming, I can say I was doing agroecological, but I was not aware of at that time doing agroecological farming. When the principle had developed, then I adapted to this to see how I am involved in this. And the marketing aspect, why you are doing the marketing aspect, how you are doing the market, you are involving the customers and others in the agroecological part. This is, I think this is agroecological. And I want to know only this, how we can say, because I don't know if the farmers is willing to transit into agroecological, how many principles they have to adopt, then they can say that I am in the agroecological farming. Otherwise, because I have not heard this, the principle, the number of principles that can be adopted to say that I am an agroecological farmer. That I want to know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gunsham. I think we've noted your comment. You were talking about how many principles. And I know when you come to organic agriculture, there are actually certain standards as to how to do things. Organic farming is a lot more strict in terms of enforcing the standards. There's zero tolerance of certain inputs, which in general agroecology, some of which will still be acceptable. I know currently we have the 10 principles for FAO under general agroecology, and then we have the 13 principles, which is what we intend to be looking into in the SADC project on the RAINSA project, which looks into the 13 principles. I just want to highlight here that because of time, I don't want to make this as a dialogue, because we have other people who really I requested that we've encroached into their time. Therefore, for the purpose of closing the meeting, because as we mentioned, this is just a start of this type of platform. We are going to have several other webinars and possibly face-to-face meetings as we go along. We will try to delve into some of the topics which have been raised here to continue to have more dialogue, because we still have to answer these questions as to whether will it be a good thing for us to switch into agroecology? Will we be able to feed our regional population? in the short term or in the longer term? And how do we embed these new policies like the soil health, which is the soil health and fertilizer use, this framework which our countries have adopted, and the CAADP, the revised, the refreshed CAADP commitment, which was adopted this year in Kampala. I think with those few remarks, let me ask Mr. Sunga to make his closing remarks so that we can be able to let people go, because we had blocked this time up to 12 so that we don't further take their time. Over to you, Mr. Sunga.
Thank you very much, Dr. Podisi, and colleagues, audiences on this webinar. I think it's an interesting start to a large extent, and we really need to tease out the issues and the potential around agroecology. In my earlier remarks, I indicated that it has room for improvement, and we really want to make it work. And perhaps it can be done at small scale only. We don't know. I don't think researchers explored that. It might be doable at medium scale, maybe also can be doable at the larger scale, industrial scale. We don't know that. But I think one message really that I keep on sort of discerning from the discussion is that it is like the old days when people were saying, let's try to make agriculture sexy. And here I think we're trying to say, how do we make agroecology sexy? And I recall one of my board chairs, he was saying, and what he said was resonating with my thoughts as well, that the sexiness of anything is in the profits, at least for the farm. If it's not profitable, you probably are putting in a lot of artificial things just to make it appealing, maybe. So as long as it is not making sufficient returns and providing a better quality of life to those that are practicing it, it is going to be a hard sell in the future. And for it to be also profitable and to be vibrant and to make farmers happy in their pockets, it has to be developed as an entire ecosystem. It cannot be that you're dealing with production only and that you're dealing with maybe the social aspects only. It has to be a value chain. And at the moment, part of our concerns is that we don't hear conversations around agroecology development from the private sector. It is only coming from the development sector and perhaps from the farmers themselves. So, and again, even if you listen to the conversations of today, it is much more about the technical aspects of agroecology. Hence, we've veered into fertilizer, we've veered into productivity and all that. It is not so much about the other elements that maketh a system. So until and unless we are intentional and deliberate about putting a system together with all the different key players, the uptake, the supermarkets, and also the market needs to be mature so that the products are differentiated. At the moment, you grow your agroecology practice sort of outputs and they sit in the same shelf. Maybe it's more costly or less costly, we don't know. But the point being that I think let's not just latch on to something because it is the flavor of the day. And part of what we're trying to do is to really look at how can research drive agroecology to the destination that we want. How can we shape our own narrative of agroecology that not only feeds the family, that is beyond gardening services, one that can also feed not only the neighbors and that can feed the nation. Also understanding that we cannot just go for one type. It has to be exist in combination with other types of agriculture. And of course, part of the major critique around agroecology is those that are promoting it are the ones that are not using it. And they are the ones then who are feeding us using the methods that we are supposed to be going away from. So that political dimension needs to be managed carefully, so that we are not seen necessarily to be shooting agroecology. It has this place and it can be optimized, and we can go for it. The questions around Sakao, finally, that I'll just quickly address. We don't have a position yet. Part of these conversations are going towards developing a position. And as you can see from the way that I'm talking, if I'm speaking to Google to here, we don't know whether there's a better one or not a better one. That's part of what you're trying to examine. The last thing that we want to do really is to motivate, encourage people to go into a system that might deliver to the environment, might also deliver to climate, but might not deliver to their own livelihoods, which is important. And maybe I'm tempted to throw in this last one, Doctor, that because of the ecosystem management services that agroecology pays, one would assume that it's a better deal also for those ecosystems management services to be paid for. Maybe in terms of also the transitioning costs. Maybe there's need for research in the transitioning costs, research into valuation of the ecosystem services that the system provides that can be monetized. I mean, that's the kind of research you want. Research that is going to look at how the benefits of and risks of the system are going to be shared equitably across the different players in the value chain. That's the research that we want, in addition to the technical research. Thanks, and I really want to end by appreciating the collaborative effort that we have put in place with CADESA. And we really want to have a lot of series around agroecology, but also a lot of series on research, and begin also to look at how we can influence CADESA itself to influence the kind of research that they want to advocate for on behalf of the region. And certainly, we really want to work with CADESA on research on agroecology. And over to you, Doctor, and thank you very much, audience, for turning up. We really appreciate your support. Sharing is caring, and we really also benefit from the contributions. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you, Mr. Sunga, for those thought-provoking statements. And I want to thank also our resource persons, the panelists, for according time to share with us their thoughts on this. And the audience, I saw that our numbers were around 80 participants who followed the meeting, and we still have about 71 who are logged in. That shows the level of interest, and we thank the partnership between ourselves and Sakao, and we will be engaging more. You said very thought-provoking statements that we need to give the farmers the levers of power in terms of dictating what research they want. Maybe we should be giving them the money, then they will commission what research has to be done so that it actually addresses what they want. I think we've noted that, and I think let me call it a day and allow everybody to.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
One last thing.
Yes.
One last thing. Sorry to interrupt you. We would like to have a group photo for all the participants.
Okay.
So,
all right. We put on our faces where possible, those who can.
And not only your faces and your best smiles as well.
All right, everyone. I'm just waiting for everybody to switch on their cameras. I've just changed the view on my side. So I'm going to take a few because I have to do about 3 pages. We are a large group. So just bear with me. I'll talk you through it.
But Dorita, why do I sense that you're focusing on me alone?
No, I could see quite a few people.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to do it a few times. So please, if yeah, bear with me. So 3 times I'm going to ask you to smile, please. Just hang tight for me. Sorry, because I have to switch between. Just a second for me.
We're getting tired of this, man.
I know, don't hold it now. So sorry. It's a thing. It's quite.
Are you using a Nokia phone or something?
No. I have to go from gallery, then I have to switch the screen if I have to really walk you through it. And then I have to go back in and then first copy and paste, of course. All right, but I'm on the second one. So I'm going to ask you to smile again, please. And then there's going to be just one more to go. Just bear with me, I'm almost done. And then the last one, oh, there's a lot of cameras not on this one. Let me just see. All right, last one. There we go. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody. Thanks for showing up, for attending. It was a useful meeting. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone, and bye.
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 Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
For this, that was a smile, right? You looked very serious.
Yes, Fred. Thanks for pitching in, and Emmanuel from ISAF. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.